How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Shiver. This is a short story collection from Junji Ito. This was put out by Viz Signature and is the very first in their Selected Stories line. Basically, the really thick, brightly colored books. Yeah, this is the first of those. It has 9 short stories in it, plus a bonus 10th story, which is less than 10 pages long, so it's short, it's a bonus, but it's still really nice to see it there. And this is, I believe, considered to be one of the best short story collections that they've released. And it's got some real classic ones in there. I didn't know that when I purchased this. If you remember, I did a review for The Liminal Zone, the newest Junji Ito to come out in America, and in The Liminal Zone, I said that I needed to get back into reading him. It had been a while since I read Ito, and I wanted to go out and pick up more, and I did. This was the first one that I picked up after Liminal Zone, and I picked it up primarily because it had the story The Long Dream in it. And The Long Dream I had heard about before, but I also had just found the movie version of it at a used movie store, and I wanted to read the manga before I watched the movie. I'll get to the movie in a little bit, but that was the reason I picked it up. I didn't know that this was like one of the best collections of his work out there. This one's got some really classic, iconic stories in it. Fashion Model, one of Junji Ito's more famous characters, the Hanging Blimps, which is a really interesting apocalyptic story, very, very surreal, and one of his more famous stories. And we even get a Tomie story in here, which, to be fair, if you have the Tomie omnibus, it is kind of a dupe. But that being said, not everyone has that omnibus, and it's a good introduction to the character if you don't know her before. So yeah, 2 very famous Junji Ito characters there, and a lot of them are just really good stories, you know? Like, the thing is, you know, with Junji Ito, everybody talks about the surrealism and the body horror and just the crazy messed up drawings you find. And yeah, those are all there, but the story is what pulls you in and takes you through this, and the stories are all really well told and do lead to some messed up revelations. I won't spoil it, but like the ending of the Honored Ancestors is just one of those things that when you see what's going on, it's not only a crazy visual, which everyone talks about, but just that concept and what that means for the main character. It's just so disturbing and messed up, and there's a whole bunch of that stuff in here. And like, you know, like Greased even, Greased, it's hard to read without gagging a little bit, and there's just so many crazy messed up stories. Yeah, you can gag at Greased, but also the story behind it is a really sad and interesting family breakup story. And yeah, the story, the art, this is a really good collection with lots of classic stuff. And again, not a bad story in the bunch. The worst stories in here are still really, really great. And overall, I do really love this collection. And once again, I will be getting around to more Ito stuff soon. Not quite sure which will be after this, but I do want to get to that Long Dream movie and see how well he gets adapted into film. But anyway, if you guys want to do a little bit more analysis, take a look at this release, take a look at some of the stories and art. I won't be doing any major spoilers, but I'll take a little look at each story. So if you want to see more, I'm going to switch over to the close-up camera, and if you want to stick around, we'll go over there and we'll take a closer look at this book. Alright, to the close-up camera. Alright, here we are inside the castle taking a closer look at Junji Ito's Shiver. I guess first off, let's bring the volume closer to the camera and take a better look at this nice cover. We can see that why this is the light blue volume is because this scene takes place in the sky. This is inspired by the Hanging Blimp story, and this cover imagines what if other characters from that story were in the Hanging Blimp story. So, you know, there's the fashion model character, there's Tomie, which I thought she had black hair, but in this cover she has brown, and there's the kid from Greased. Then we see this little badge here, Junji Ito Selected Stories, and we can flip it to the spine and see Shiver with a little drawing. I really do like, they'll keep thick black lettering, but change the letter style for each volume, and they'll always give us a little picture down here, in this case, someone getting pulled away by a hanging blimp. Now, I think a few things that make this volume a little different. Junji Ito Selected Stories, I think in all the other volumes, they would change that to short stories, and the Viz logo in the other volumes would be updated to their newer logo without the border. So this one is a little bit different. Flip it to the back, a nice, almost grayed out image, and it says, including 9 of Junji Ito's best short stories, selected by the author himself and presented with accompanying notes and commentary. And then over here on the bottom, T+ for older teens, and USA price of $22.99, which is a pretty fair price considering that this is almost 400 pages long, almost. And we can see the Viz Signature and Viz Media logo on the very bottom. Now, we open it up, and it's got these nice marbled blue end papers, and then after that we have the table of contents. Now, the main image for the table of contents is a bunch of smashed statues of nude women. Now, it's a drawing, but not only a drawing, but a drawing of a statue, so I shouldn't get in trouble for it, but I never know what makes YouTube flip out, so I'm going to just show you guys the very edge where it's actually just the contents, and I'm going to crop that out. But anyway, contents, used records, Shiver, fashion model, Hanging Blimp, Marionette Mansion, Painter, that's the Tomie story, The Long Dream, Honored Ancestors, Greased, and previously unpublished news story, fashion model, Cursed Frame. And then we can see the afterword is on page 397. So yeah, almost 400 pages, which is a pretty thick book. After that, we get the stories, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a little bit of each story. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers. I want to take a minute to analyze each story, give you guys a basic understanding as to what they're about, but I won't go to the end. I won't show that twist, which unfortunately a lot of Junji Ito's crazier artwork is at the end, and I don't want to spoil anything, so you're going to have to actually read the book if you want to see those crazier moments. I really don't want to ruin them for you. So anyway, let's take a look at the first story. Alright, so first up, we have Used Record, and I do like they give each story a little cover page, and this is a really fun Chase the MacGuffin story with a really satisfying explanation as to what's going on with this thing. Really creepy backstory. But you get this used record. It's a little 45, so it's a single, and it's got this blank slipcase, so they don't know who's singing it, what the name of the song is, and it's this mysterious record. And these girls are listening to it, and you can see from these la 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 speech bubbles that it's just a person singing. It's scat, as they call it, and they don't know who's singing. There's weird little things like people talking in the background from time to time, so it seems like a really impromptu, unprofessional recording, so they don't know what the origins of it are, but the one girl who owns it won't lend it out and won't let it be recorded. It's hers, and she wants to be the only one with it. This will inspire her friend to try to steal the record, and in an effort to keep the record for herself, she'll actually bash her friend in the head with this rock that she found. So yeah, one of those cases of something so good that people resort to violence to keep it. The thing is, though, she doesn't actually have a record player, and they're not super in fashion right now, so she looks around for a place that will play it for her, and the guy at the record store also seems to recognize the record, and now he wants it. And yeah, a fun Chase the MacGuffin story, but she does eventually wander into this jazz cafe, and maybe they'll have the record, and the record player, rather, and she gets her chance to hear the record again when this one patron looks up and goes, "Wait a minute, is that what I think it is?" And that's where we get the really great backstory to this record, and again, the conclusion of our chase scene with a few fun twists and turns along the way. I will show you for this one that after the story, they do have this author commentary section, and after the author commentary, there is a sketchbook and notes page from when he was creating the story, and a nice little translation of what's written in the notes off to the side. Now, the sketchbook pages, we get varying amounts of them. Sometimes we get a few, sometimes just one. So they're different lengths for those pages. But I do like, with the commentary, getting to know a little bit about where the stories came from. And seeing those sketch pages, you really realize that these stories didn't come out fully formed. And sometimes what plays a minor role in the final story will have been the inspiration for the whole thing, and sometimes these stories change a whole lot, and I really do like to see how they changed from an earlier concept, and those commentaries to sort of get in Ito's head are really fun as well, and there is an afterword after the book for a final wrap-up, so I do love the bonus features here. Anyway, after this, we get Shiver. This is the story that the whole book's named after. And Shiver is a good name for an anthology book. It's not the best story in here by far. This is a case of a great Junji Ito visual, but it's not the best story-wise. The story's kind of simple. It's not a bad story, but it's not the most interesting, engaging story ever, but the visual and where it leads. Anyway, you get this family living next door to your protagonist. They have an overgrown backyard, and a doctor walks in through the back door all the time, and he hears the patient, a young neighbor girl, screaming. And she screams a lot, and in turn, no one really listens to her anymore. A very sad thought. But sometimes she pokes her head out, and she's got these holes in her arms. So yeah, the people that are scared of holes, this is going to be one that creeps you out, and we do get this close-up zooming in of all the holes on her arm. But he has the story when he was a young boy. He wasn't supposed to go see his dying grandfather, but he did anyway, and the grandfather is also dying of this mysterious hole thing. So how does that relate to the girl next door? Why are they both dying in the same way? Who is this mysterious doctor? Well, one day, his friend comes over and says, "Hey, your current room is your grandpa's past room," and he finds that there's a book stuck in the bookshelf that was his dying grandpa's journal, and we're gonna get an explanation for the mysterious holes. So overall, a fine enough story, but when you get to the end, there's, again, going better based on the visuals than the story, because the creepy hole thing, it gets creepy. Anyway, after that, we have a story with a very famous Junji Ito character. This is Fashion Model. We get to see some regular models in the front, and then the creepy fashion model looming in the back. And the story itself, it's a good story. Nothing we haven't really seen super much before. It's an interesting lead-in to the story, but then after that, it's kind of standard. But the character is such a creepy Junji Ito character that this character has developed really a cult following, and it definitely is a good character. So good lead-in, good character, but then it kind of plays out relatively standard after that. Good, but not the best thing ever. But I do love the lead-in, where you get this guy, and he says, "I have a bad feeling today, and I know I have to trust my guts." And he bashes his head on a sign by mistake, and he goes, "No, it's not that. The feeling is much worse." And I really do like the idea of writing a story about a vague sense of dread that you don't quite understand. You know, there's no logical reason for it, but you feel this terror. And he's sitting in the coffee shop, and he sees someone's left a magazine. And on this magazine, it's a fashion magazine, he flips through it, and he sees a model with a scary face. And yeah, just seeing this person is what he was warned about. It's so scary, he's not going to be able to get her out of his head. And he's like, what in the world? Why would anyone hire such a strange-looking model? And the face is going to really get to him, and he's like trying to write a script. He's a film student, and he just sees a nightmarish version of that face looming over him. Well, eventually he finishes the script, and the movie has a little bit of success. So now they're becoming known in the amateur world, and they put out a call for auditions for their next film. They have enough pull to do an audition call, and they're getting a lot of photos, which are of nice girls they would love to have in their movie. But they open up that last photo, and it is, of course, the audition packet for the creepy model that he saw in the magazine. And he complains about this. He's like, "That's that girl that I can't get out of my head. She's so creepy." And her friends go, "Wait, she's a famous model? You saw her in a magazine? We really need to build our reputation. Let's work with a famous person." And boy, don't you know it, that whole idea of telling people, hey, let's not do something, and that inspires them to do it more. But anyway, they decide to hire her. She's, of course, acting very strange, and they go there in their van, and one of them tells a joke, and the first sign that you can tell that something really is even more creepy is she laughs, and she's got these shark teeth. Oh, man. But yeah, the idea that there's something about a person that just gets in your head and you can't ignore it. And it's like, oh man, I am picking up major bad vibes. Even before I even saw her that day, I was getting these bad vibes. Yeah, that's a crazy story. Anyway, after that, we're moving on to what is probably the most famous story. It's the one that inspired the cover. The most famous story in this collection, a Junji Ito classic. This is Hanging Blimp, and we see this lady being hanged and a bunch of heads with ropes flying through the air, which will be a clue as to what's going on in the story. And there's our main character there with the bow on her head. We open up in sort of a how did we get here type deal, where someone's knocking at the window and she is scared and she doesn't want to go to the knocking. But who's outside? What's going on? It seems like an apocalyptic scenario. She's talking about running out of food. But of course, this all happened when a lady hung herself outside of a window. But the thing is, it's just not any lady hanging herself. This lady was actually a famous celebrity. And okay, so that's going to get lots of people up in arms talking about this. But the thing is, she, when she was just in regular high school, was the best friend of the main character. So the idea that your friend who is just your friend from average, regular, everyday life all of a sudden goes on to become this big superstar, and then the public has a relationship with someone you know personally, and that sort of interesting dichotomy there. Before we get into what this story is known for, this has really great setup for it. You know, for example, the girl's boyfriend, who is just a regular guy from their high school, gets surrounded by this group of people who have decided, even though they're third party and have only seen all this stuff on the news, that surely the boyfriend is who drove her to suicide, and without any real evidence, just suspicion, start beating up on this guy, and the main girl has to go leave or I'll call the police. And yeah, a whole bunch of stuff talking about celebrity and the people who were there before and how they're impacted by this. But people are starting to see her ghost, and people are hanging themselves, and they say that the ghost is literally a giant version of her head, and no one believes it until it's caught on camera, and boy is that a creepy visual. But yeah, something that has major weight with the public, and now they're literally seeing its face looming over them. Ah, man, like I said, before we get into what this story is known for, there's such a good setup with this one. But anyway, I suppose I should talk about what the story's actually known for. The boyfriend eventually tracks down the ghost and gets the other girl over there, and when he goes to see the ghost floating in the air, a noose comes down and hangs him, and it turns out that the noose was actually connected to a giant version of his own head. So we're dipping into surrealist horror, and we'll soon see that everybody in the town has a head of their own in the sky with a noose, and if your head finds you, it will try to hang you. Very, very surrealist horror, and I won't go any farther because I don't want to do spoilers, but it's how do you survive, what is your relationship with the head, and, you know, how can you figure it out? Honestly, they could have, this concept's so good, they could have made a longer version of the story. I mean, you could have wrote in as long as Uzumaki is about just this one concept, but it is a really cool, surreal, different apocalypse story towards the end, instead of zombies hanging blimps. After that, we get one that I really love, Marionette Mansion. This one is one of those concepts that when I heard it, I'm like, okay, that's messed up. But our main kid is living in the back of this truck with his father and his older brother and younger sister, and they're all puppeteers. He's not that great, but his brother has done this all his life, and he's the one who's really good at it. But they're, you know, sort of troubled by road life. You know, it's literally all they do. They can't make friends. You know, he's at the school, and they're introducing him, and this girl really likes him and says, hey, I want to see where you live. I want to see all your puppets. So he takes her back, shows her all the different puppets they have, but then his brother's favorite puppet was his name, John Pierre. Creepy little puppet, but his character is a magician, but that's the one that his brother likes the most. But of course, they're going to have to move on, and we get, you know, yeah, the girl liked him, but I mean, there was never any real hope, you know, and the brother's kind of teasing him, but then talks about how he's really fed up with this road life and kind of wishes the dad would get sick or something, and almost prophetically, that's what happens. So the dad's sick, and he gives a speech about the nature of puppets, where he said the puppet is an expression of the puppeteer's will. And then we get the kind of the point of the story is when they're asleep at night, the older brother says, no, that's not right. It's not us controlling the puppets. The puppets move because they feed on us. The puppets feed on our movements in order to live. It's not the puppeteer, but the puppet who's in control. So the older brother runs away, and the dad will die. And yeah, so overall, again, another Junji Ito story with a great intro. But we do a time jump. He's working now, and he's built a successful life for him and his sister. And he actually runs into the girl from all those years ago, and the two hit it off and reconnect, and they're going to start dating. And overall, if this is where the story ended, that would be a happy story. But no, he gets a letter in the mail from his brother who ran away, and he's going to find out what his brother's been doing. He's going to go to his brother's house, and he's greeted first by Jean-Pierre. And he looks up in the sky, and there's the whole house is rigged up to be a giant puppet theater. These little platforms with holes so the puppets can move relatively freely around the house. But then we get to what this story's about and how crazy it is. His brother and his family, his wife and son, have rigged themselves up to be puppets. As the brother explained earlier, it's the puppets who are in real control, so he can use his servants to make him move, and in turn, he can stay completely relaxed and move throughout his day. And boy, there's just something when I got to see what this story was about, how just creepy it was that you would not move for yourself, and like the kid's even asleep and he's being puppeteered around the house. Oh man, that's such a creepy concept, and I won't go into how it ends or too much more details, but I do gotta show the creepy ballerina puppets that he has as entertainment, and they even make his sleeping son dance with them. Oh man, just a creepy concept that, you know, it's a case of living your life in a different way, but man, just the idea that you wouldn't be able, like, I mean, you're still supposedly doing what you want to do because, you know, the puppet is really in control, but man, the idea that someone would be pulling your strings, that is crazy. So this is definitely one of my personal favorites in here. After that, we get Painter, the Tomie story. And yeah, I haven't read the Tomie Omnibus that Viz put out yet. Definitely on my to-read list. It does sound like a cool story. A girl that keeps coming back like a lizard regrowing her tail. But anyway, we see this painting, a creepy painting of Tomie with two faces. This is one of the iconic images of the series. And he's like, I painted this, it's a masterpiece, but no one will respect me and no one will look at it. And then, well, how did we get here? How did we get to the origin of this painting? And you see that this guy is a young, successful artist. He's made it in the art world. People love his paintings. And they're all a series of paintings of this new model. I believe her name is like Nana or something. But of course, Tomie is going to wander into the gallery, and she's so beautiful that he has to go up and talk to her. And Tomie will say, you're a good painter, but your model is an airhead, and it shows. And he, of course, kind of dismisses that, but later on he's painting, and Tomie shows up and laughs at him for continuing to paint the same model, and says, hey, didn't we agree that she was an airhead? Why are you continuing to paint her? And she, of course, gets angry and storms off, and now Tomie has the painter all to herself, and is going to see if someone can actually capture her beauty in a physical form, because for some reason photographs can't do it. And we also get to find a little bit of a story of the other artist that she may have messed with. But yeah, Tomie is going to start influencing this artist because she wants a picture of herself. And of course, this is all going to go terribly. Not the best story ever in here, and it is kind of a dupe from the Tomie Omnibus. But, you know, as an introduction to the character, I think it's pretty good. And Yeah, just a kind of interesting, one of those quest for perfect beauty type stories. You know, I can never be a good enough painter type deal. Anyway, after that we have the story that got me to buy the book, The Long Dream. And this one actually has a cold opening before the title page. But this girl's afraid of dying, and she says that she saw death in her hotel room. But what does she mean when she says she saw death? There's the Long Dream intro page. But we get to see some doctors talking to her, and they're like, oh, that wasn't death, that was this other patient. And he wandered into your room, and we're sorry he scared you. He's a very scary-looking man. And then the younger doctor says, hey, I'm a little bit new here. What's going on with the other patient? And we find that we do a little bit of a flashback, and this guy, he comes in, and he talks about how he has a problem. He has long dreams. And he says, you know, it starts off where the dream was like a day, and then it eventually gets to be where it's like a week that he's dreaming, and then eventually it's a couple months, and by the time he goes into the hospital, he had a dream that even though it was just overnight, it was for him a whole year. So he goes to sleep, from his perspective a whole year passes, and he wakes up and it's just the next day. So his dreams are getting longer. And of course they're going to study him, and they find that when he gets to the dream, which is not very long at all, it goes really, really fast for him. He gets a serious case of rapid eye movement, and the doctors don't really know what to do. And what happens when it gets longer and longer, and eventually it's thousands of years, and eventually, you know, people in the dream don't remember him, even though he may have had a long relationship with them. And, you know, what happens when you're stuck, and, you know, like, here's him in war in one of his dreams. In another dream, he's preparing for the big test for 9 years, prepping for one exam that isn't real. And yeah, a bunch of crazy nightmares. And also, when you have a dream that's literally over a year long, you're not gonna remember waking life eventually, which, man, so much crazy concepts here. But there is, as his body adapts, there's a bit of a body horror element. And personally, the concept was strong enough, you didn't really need the body horror, even though it is what Ito's known for, and it is a cool visual. But yeah, I mean, the concept alone was strong enough. You didn't really need it. But man, it is just a cool story. It's one of those concepts you can really sink your head into and go, wow, that's pretty messed up. So a really good story there. Anyway, after that we get Honored Ancestors. And I think Honored Ancestors, I think that's followed by Greased. Man, a couple really messed up stories as we get to the end. But you get your main girl there, and this boy is leading her in to her house, and goes up to the mom and says, hey, I found her wandering around. She has amnesia, Risa. She doesn't know who she is. So she has amnesia, and the boy is saying, hey, don't worry, it sucks to lose your memory, but we'll rebuild new memories together. We'll give you a good life starting from the ground up. However, she's laying in bed with a vague sense of anxiety and terror. She doesn't really know what she's afraid of. Again, a really good creepy concept. Why am I so anxious? Well, she hears a knocking at the door, and a centipede or a caterpillar comes walking in her door. Creepy big bug, you know, just the way it's drawn. But that's just a nightmare. That's not really what's happening. But why is she getting visions of a creepy caterpillar? Well, the boy invites her to his house, and they start to talk, and she's getting a bad feeling from this house when she hears a noise And the guy's dad, who is supposed to be sick, crawls in, and he's doing this weird crawl on his back and poking his head in and saying, "Hey, what's going on with that girl? Remember, she promised to marry you." So the dad kind of just spills the beans that, she had just found out that they were dating before, and now it turns out that they were engaged to be married. So yeah, what was my relationship like with this guy? And also, this house. I have a bad feeling about this house. What's going on? And I won't spoil the twist, and I'm not going as far in these stories as you might think, but when you find out what the deal is, oh my gosh, is it a messed up reveal what's really going on here? It is a very, very creepy Junji Ito moment, and I would definitely recommend it. It's one of those, when I saw the reveal, and I'm like, wait a minute, are they doing that? It was just, it's one of those things you have to stop and go, wow, that's messed up, that's creepy. And then after this, we have Greased, and the story's usually just called Greased, but I don't know why it says oil underneath it. But Greased Oil, I guess, and you get her drowning in the grease. But this is, well, A, a gross out story, but B, also talking about honest family dynamics and the collapse of a family. We start off with her in her happy place by Mount Fuji, but she shows up at home, and we see the contrast really quick. You see, her dad runs a restaurant, there's not enough ventilation, and the whole house gets covered with cooking oil. So the whole house is greasy. Right off the bat, that's a crazy concept. The idea that in your own house you'd never be able to feel comfortable and it's all hot and oily and greasy, that's crazy. But she has a father whose skin is always oily, and an older brother, the same, who likes to torture her, but also sneaks down in the middle of the night to drink salad oil. Oh man, that's gross, but it's gonna get grosser. He starts to get, during puberty, really, really pimply, and of course he's going to get bullied by people in school because of his face. And he'll eventually take that out on his sister because he has no other outlet. And you get this scene like he fights with his father, and he starts drinking even more oil. And we get sort of the start of the main conflict. "Go, sister, buy me more oil." And she accidentally says, "Ew." And that inspires him to get all angry at his sister and hold her down and squeeze his pimply face over her face. And I won't flip the page and show you the next part. If you want to see that, you got to buy the book. But yeah, the rest of the story can get pretty gross. There's nightmare sequences, and what this family turns into after this scene, oh man. So yeah, a really good story about a family falling apart, and just crazy gross out humor in this one. So yeah, another messed up story. But after that, we get the bonus story. Like I said, only less than 10 pages long. Fashion model cursed frame, a way to get his fashion model character back for another story. And we get this girl, and she's signed on to be a model. She's so pretty that everybody's been trying to get her to do this for a while, but she has a strange phobia. She doesn't like it when pieces of her body are cut out of frame. She says it's a weird, surreal feeling seeing herself and then not seeing like all her arms and legs. It feels like if they're cut out of frame, they don't exist. They're literally cut out. And it's just this weird phobia, and she says, only full body shots because I don't want to be cropped. And then, of course, she meets the fashion model character, and she tries to be nice because she's a senior model, but she, of course, is creeped out, and she will have a negative reaction when some of her photos that were originally full body shots do get cropped in publication. And it's this whole thing where she knows the fear is ridiculous, but it still bugs her. But how does this phobia, how does she cope with it, and what's going to happen with the fashion model character? A very short but sweet, maybe sweet's the wrong word, a short and crazy story. And, you know, Ito usually gets about 35 pages or so, but to see him shine in just 7, I kind of wonder, you know, what would a Junji Ito anthology of just, like, less than 10-page stories be like? I think that might be good, because even though it's short, he pulls off quite a bit there. But anyway, Shiver is, I think, his one of his best short story collections. Hanging Blimp, Marionette Mansion, Honored Ancestors, Greased. There's a bunch. Like I said, even the worst story in here is really pretty good. And yeah, some really interesting concepts. And yeah, overall, I walked away from this short story collection really liking it, and there are definitely going to be some short stories in here that I think about long after I've read the book. So definitely would recommend this. I think a lot of people suggest that this is a good Junji Ito starter. You know, you even get a sampling of Tomie in there. So anyway, definitely would recommend this. This is a great short story collection, and I definitely will get to more Ito soon. I've actually started reading Uzumaki, you know, his biggest, most iconic story, so that will probably be my next Junji Ito manga review whenever I finish that. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. If you want to see more, I'll put a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should probably be my anthology horror comics playlist, where you can also find my review for Junji Ito's The Liminal Zone. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Anthology horror comics playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.